We get a massive Vancouver Canucks trade update as J.T. Miller has been linked to an Eastern Conference team as they're kicking tires on him, and the Canucks management have a huge decision to make with J.T. Miller and how the Canucks go forward. We're going to break all this down and more in this episode, but Griffin, let's just hop straight into it today, where we get multiple insiders coming out, speaking out on the JT Miller situation. So the first one came from Nick Kypreos, and this was on the Kypreos and Bourne podcast. And he says, while maybe easier to move either or both of Miller and Pettersson in the offseason, it's not impossible something could happen before the March 7th. If it does, keep an eye on New Jersey for either player. Now, looking at this, we all seen this come out just about 2 days ago, but it did get even more spicier when we had more insiders come out. The first one is from Elite Prospects, Cam Robinson. He covers everything to do with prospects, and he says there's some smoke out there that the Devils are really kicking tires on JT Miller. We also get an update from Donnie and Dolly, and they said in the morning's interview with Hartford and Borough, the Devils are looking at Miller. Also mentioned the last thing the Rangers want is the Devils to get him. This is looking like it honestly could turn into a bidding war on JT Miller. But Griffin, looking at this, we've had reports all season coming out from the PD and Miller feud, from Miller looking like his time has declined. We've seen in the intro video where Tocchet went to him in the game versus LA, spoke to him, he sat at the end of the bench, played a team low of 9 minutes and I think 50 seconds, 5-on-5. What's your initial thoughts on a team actively looking at Miller? And do you think the Canucks are going to move on from him?
This is so conflicting to think about because heading into this season, I know on this show I've even said it, JT Miller was my favorite Canuck heading into this season. So it sucks that it's coming to this point where it seems like a fall from grace in a sense as far as team morale and where he sits with the team because of what he was last season. And it's not anything against his points or production. You look at his stats right there. They're really good stats, especially when considering the team that he's on, how we've been struggling. He still managed to have this impressive points, almost point per game really, despite missing so much time as well. So it's not like it's a matter of production really as to why the writing's on the wall with this. It's all to do with the morale thing, the drama, and just like you said, what happened on the bench with Tocchet the other night and what's happened on the bench during a lot of these games in regards to JT Miller, whether it's him smashing his stick, getting a spout with somebody, or just sitting and riding the bench for the rest of the game. So there's a lot of things at play here where it's not just a matter of what's happening on the ice, it's what's happening off the ice probably more so. We don't know if he's going through some personal things right now that aren't PD related, so we don't touch on that. Just hopefully if there is, he works through it. However, with this, it's so conflicting to think about, especially with what we could be getting for him and that potential, which we're going to dive into in a second. However, I think right now it's very conflicting to be a Canucks fan when you look at this because of what JT Miller has meant to this team. I know we covered it in our last video where I was saying how much Brock Boeser means to this team, but really all four of the core four members of this team of Brock Boeser, JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, and Quinn Hughes are what makes this team go. And as much as there's a lot of drama there, I just wish for nothing more than for them to set aside their differences, make this all resolve itself, and hopefully they get back to the way that they were playing. But unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the world we live in, and it's a ruthless business. And unfortunately, not many careers or just stints with teams end very well. That's why they ultimately end.
And I mean, looking at this, we have all these reports coming out that the Devils are in on him. The biggest thing with this is we've seen Miller come out in the interview. They had 2 stinkers of games versus the Winnipeg Jets and the LA Kings last night or the night before, depending when you're watching this. We've seen his ice time drop. We've seen him in interviews saying, I need to play better. The biggest thing looking at this, with the Devils in on them, they're a team that wants to be a contender. They're rolling through the East. They want to pick up more players. This is a team that's in the prime position to go out and get Miller, especially if Tocchet's at the end of his line with him. If we see management want to make a shakeup of leadership in this room, as we've seen so many rumors come out. But the biggest thing with this is, and it really links into the New Jersey Devils, is the fact that we did get quotes from an interview in Europe with Simon Nemec, where he did an interview and said, I've gone through the toughest period of my career. It's over now and I'm playing hockey again. The biggest thing is you might be saying, why does this matter? But he says it's hard to say. It's still too early to request a trade. If the situation continues, it will have to be addressed. But for now, this is how it stands. Nemec is a defenseman that the New Jersey Devils drafted 2nd overall in 2022. with them having a crowded blue line, with the Canucks not having a crowded blue line, this is where things could work out perfectly. You're looking at Nemec. He's 20 years old, from Slovakia, second overall pick in 2022. He was out for a couple of games or a lot of the season to start this year after being in Olympic qualifiers and dislocating or hurting his shoulder. I'm not sure the exact injury, but since then, we haven't seen him jump onto this New Jersey blue line. He played 9 games this year, registering 1 assist. In 2023-24, he put up 19 points in 60 games as a defenseman. But this really leads into, Griffin, if Nemec is really looking at a change, if he wants to be out of New Jersey, if a team like New Jersey really wants J.T. Miller, do you think this is where the Canucks have to start the conversation? Say, hey, we're going to retool this year. We get a good draft pick. We can pick up one of the top prospect defensemen in the entire National Hockey League. Go from there and try to open the window again? Or do you think they should go out and try to maybe acquire a player that can help them right now?
This is where the confliction and the overall just unknowing how to feel about it comes in, because with Nemec, yeah, he shows a lot of potential, and if he works out to be what he seems to be, he could be one of the best defensemen in the league. But with JT Miller, you know what you have as well, so you run a risk. It's almost like when you're in a relationship where things are a little on the rocks, you're not sure how things are going to go, and you see something where, oh, maybe the grass is greener on the other side, but you're not entirely sure. That's what's involved with a lot of these risks. I don't blame him. That's just the business of hockey. However, when you have a guy who had 100 points last season and you have a guy who's an unproven commodity but could be really good, that's a very tough decision to make. And what also makes it a very tough decision to make is if they don't go out and get Nemec, now you have the risk of going out and getting an established guy at a much more expensive price tag. So that's the other thing the Canucks have to look at where, okay, if we don't go and get Nemec, who do we go and get that isn't going to break the bank? Options aren't as much options as there should be, I should say. And when you look at Nemec, good friendly cap hit, a lot of potential going into the final year of that rookie deal. So there's a lot of upside for him as to what he's going to play to prove as well. And this is a Canucks team where we've seen them pull career years out of guys or make guys just showcase to the NHL what other teams were passing on. We saw that with Eric Brandstrom. I know there's been a lot of up and downs with him in Abbotsford and all that. But as far as defensive prospects go, he's been one of those guys where they brought him in, they got rid of Tucker Pullman, and he played fairly well. A little bit inconsistent, but it shows that the Canucks can bring out things in players that other teams just didn't see. Is that the case with Nemec? Who knows, because it is an unproven commodity. He hasn't gotten much playing time, but he is hungry to keep playing more. But the other part of it, like I said, is now if you don't go and get Nemec, if you go out and get a guy who is established, now you have a 1-year rental or a price tag thing to worry about where you're in the same situation that you had with Nikita Zadorov, Elias Lindholm, and you're going to have it at a time where Brock Boeser's contract is expiring. Quinn Hughes will be eligible for an extension next year. So there's a lot of things at play here where I don't blame the Canucks for wanting to go for younger blood over older blood. That makes more sense financially. However, exchanging young, unproven blood for veteran, leader, and point-producing blood, that's what worries me.
And I mean, looking at Nemec, the biggest thing is, yes, there is a big question mark on if he will ever become a top 2 defenseman, a top 4 defenseman. But the biggest thing, and what I look at this, with the Canucks and how they're playing, something has to give at some point. They either need to move on from leadership, fire Rick Tocchet, which I don't think you should do. We've seen this Canucks team go through so many head coaches over the past, what feels like 10 years, that it seems like they truly need to do maybe a shakeup in the locker room. This could be a small trade. This could be as big as J.T. Miller. But my vision of things, if you can go and get someone like Nemec to add to this blue line, a former 2nd overall pick in 2022, a lot of people debated that he should have been the number 1 pick in this draft. If you can go acquire him, add him to this blue line, you bring in a guy like Tom Willender at the end of the year or as early as next season, you have the future core of someone like Quinn Hughes, Nemec, Hronek, Willender, and whoever else you want to put on this back end. That is a Stanley Cup winning D pairings if everything pans out. But what's your guys' thoughts on this? What's your thoughts on someone like Nemec looking for maybe a new scenery? What's your thoughts on the Devils going in and kicking tires on someone like J.T. Miller? Maybe the Rangers are in on him as well, as we've seen Dolly just kind of come out and say the Rangers don't want to see this. Maybe Braden Schneider is going to actually become a Vancouver Canuck after what felt like 4 years of rumors. What are you guys' thoughts on everything? Go down and leave a comment below. While you're down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We're trying to reach 6,000, so if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to go down and do that. But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Griffin, and take care.